is the Communications Advocacy Officer for United and Strong. That is a human rights group in Saint Lucia, operating in Saint Lucia. His name is Bennet Charles. Good day.
Thank you very much, Jessy, for having me. And I think we're most appreciative at United and Strong to have the opportunity to do this discussion.
Thank you so much. And we are now at the office of United and Strong. It's so refreshing to see literature, etc., promoting human rights.
Yes.
For a change. What has your life been like as an advocate for developmental human rights issues, especially for the LGBT community? Give me a bit about your background. What inspired you to take up this career? How does your background tie in to inspire, what you do now?
Definitely. I think started off from definitely being a high school teacher at the Georgetown Secondary School, and it is a school which was seen as one of the lower secondary schools, so you dealt with students who came from marginalized communities in itself. And it was quite difficult to understand how you could really make a difference as a teacher, and so I thought that involvement segueing into the National Youth Council, again working at a community level and being a voice for the most at-risk populations and young persons who I think were muted by whatever policies they were currently sort of said with me. Being involved a lot with HIV, working with marginalized population, for example, sex workers, men who have sex with men, persons who are HIV positive. Again, I think sort of created the platform in itself to really enter this field of work. During this course, I think that my mom and grandma from a very hardcore Catholic background in itself, where my parents were very close to the bishop, Kelvin Felix in itself. I mean, so it really was when it started becoming the movement was like, okay, you're Catholic Christian, parents very hardcore Catholic Christian in itself. So it sort of was like you are at the extreme end of a conversation that was very, I think, controversial in the time in itself. And so my parents thought that, why would you be involved in working with LGBT persons in Saint Lucia, where you very knew our stance as Catholic Christians. However, my mom has always been one who supported me being different in terms of the way I spoke about people, the way I supported people, especially my involvement in the National Youth Council. I think was the critical changing factor in terms of having a degree in agricultural science. I'm moving away from this. I think the natural sciences into the social sciences, I think, was a lot more comforting for me because I was able to directly impact on the lives of people.
Okay. Why should society, and more specifically heterosexuals, be interested in the LGBT community, interested in lesbians, gays, transvestites? Why should we?
I think holistically as a society, we need to be accepting of people's differences. Once those differences, I think, don't impede on you as an individual, and I think critically this has been one of the biggest factors. So if you take a look at society in itself, we have largely been a society which has been shaped by I think, the minorities in itself. You go back from the time of slavery, again, it was a big factor. You go into the time of the trade movement in the Caribbean region, again, it was persons who thought that they were underrepresented, they were the minorities, again, stood up for that. You look at the issue of the women's movement in the Caribbean region, same thing. You look at the movement, the youth movement in Saint Lucia, again, minorities themselves have to start standing up for themselves. And we believe that when it comes to sexual orientation and sex in itself, people automatically assume that a large percentage of society is supposedly heterosexual. But we don't speak about our sexuality, at least not openly. And those who openly speak about it seem to be called the minorities in itself. So the LGBT population, they speak about it. So people assume that LGBT persons are the minorities in itself. And a lot of us tend to remain closeted to our sexual orientation. But I think, one, the heterosexual community and generally society in itself needs to understand and accept the fact that we're different as human beings. And because the fact that our sexuality lies along a spectrum, it's not basically you're black or white. There are varying degrees of sexuality, and because of that, we need to accept the fact that people are different as human beings. That's why we have various races at the end of this. So if we are different in terms of our ethnicity, why can't we be different in terms of our sexuality?
Understood. Equality, diversity, inclusion, as you've been speaking about. After many years of awareness campaigns, protests, debates, do you think by and large society has still not gotten the point about what these words even mean? What do you think is mean?
I think certain sectors of society in terms of what the issue is. Again, I draw to the youth movement, and again, looking at the issues of equality. I think stepping into the boundaries of the LGBT movement, it was something that persons feared in terms of speaking about because, again, it went into the issue of sex. It went into the issue of expressing who you were as a person. And not, right, what we consider taboo. And I do still believe that sex is only taboo in certain areas, and not in all areas. Certainly not on the streets. Okay? But, however, I certainly think that the issue of what's missing is the fact that I think there's still, persons still have a difficulty in accepting who they are as individuals. I think that's one big factor in itself. So the whole issue, and even trying to figure out that someone who may be of a different sexual orientation with me, we're on an equal playing field in itself. I think these are the things that are difficult for persons to sometimes accept and understand at the end of the day. I do feel there's been a big change. There has been change made along that way in itself. I mean, before, when you look at issues talking about proposals approaching the World Bank, approaching the Ministry of Education, approaching the Ministry of Health, you could not say the word LGBT. You could not say the word MSM. You could not say sex workers. But the environment has changed a bit where you can actually speak about that. And though our laws may still focus very anti-LGBT laws, the government still has an obligation to work with marginalized population within those various groupings itself. So there has been change. However, I think sometimes when we go 2 steps forward, something happens that brings it back in itself. A government may change, a president may change, politics may change at the end of the day. You know, we lose advocates, we gain new advocates. But I think at the end of the day, sometimes those strides are small. However, there have been a lot of change within the LGBT community, not just in Saint Lucia, but in the Caribbean region.
You mentioned the perception there is about the LGBT community being minority. Can you give us an understanding of what is the pie slice of the population that is LGBT in Saint Lucia? One
of the critical things we're doing currently is on membership, we do have over 500%. Now, mind you, United and Strong is not just an organization that draws membership from persons who are different in terms of their sexual orientation. We do have allies also.
Human rights.
Right, persons who are involved in that. The critical thing is that one of the biggest issues we've had is actually trying to figure out what is the population size of the LGBT population within Saint Lucia. And actually this year, with support from the Global Fund and the OECS, we will actually be doing a size estimation survey in Saint Lucia, sort of capturing what really truly is the population size of the LGBT within a Saint Lucian population, although it's looking at dealing with the issues of HIV. But it would give the organization an idea of, really and truly, these are the facts. And when you speak to international organizations, when you speak to governments, people love figures. They want percentages. And we as an advocate organization need to be able to say this is a certain percentage of the community, of the country, in Saint Lucia in itself. And because we've had this is what the survey said, we need to start understanding that LGBT persons are in every sector of society in Saint Lucia and in every community.
Okay. I remember that just recently a member of parliament, we're due for a break, but before we go to break, I remember that just recently a member of local parliament stating in the context of religion that we should not legislate for minorities, but rather deal with minority matters on a case-by-case basis. She described it as a standard, that is an international standard. How do you respond to the position that we should deal with cases affecting the LGBT community, which is still perceived as a minority group in the absence of data, the LGBT community on a case-by-case basis, instead of enacting, repealing, or adjusting legislation?
Okay, simple look for that. Why is it that Saint Lucia is establishing a Domestic Violence Act? Who are the persons who are usually affected by domestic violence? Predominantly, we say women. So why can't we just deal with women who have been domestically abused, physically, sexually, on a case-by-case basis? Let's not have a policy for it. It wouldn't make any sense. Why is it that we have within our criminal code the issue of rape and marital rape? Are women truly getting raped, or is it because it's only a minority? And why can't we deal with it on a case-by-case basis? The fact is that whenever persons are being threatened, whenever the security of an individual is threatened, whenever as a human being, your life as an individual is being threatened, the very existence within the country is being threatened, it is the responsibility of the government and the governance structures of the day to deal with that in a way based on policy, based on legislation that ensure that the citizens can live a very comfortable life.
We'll let that dog sleep.
Yes.
The justice system legislation, please share with the public how much is equality, diversity, inclusion? These frameworks, of course, you just mentioned that there is a lot lacking.
Yes.
What is United and Strong advocating for in terms of the legislation?
One of the critical things United and Strong spoke about very early on, if you could recall, is the constitution reform process in itself. We did play a role in terms of actually bringing forward a number of suggestions to the government. I can recall that the chair of the Constitution Reform Committee during a discussion said that Saint Lucia was not ready to have discussions on those issues in itself. And even you can recall the then Honorable Richard Frederick spoke about the issue of marriage and same-sex marriage, which is not something that UNS was pushing. We're looking at the issues of the Burglary Act, the issue of Gross Indecency Act, even the issues within the Labor Code where it deals with, again, how LGBT populations are perceived at work. So really and truly, as an organization, we're interested in at least sitting with policymakers and dialoguing and letting them understand how those laws affect the day-to-day lives of people in Saint Lucia. These are the things we're concerned about in itself, and that there are policies that are archaic in itself, and we as a nation to these policies. Sit with the minorities at every how these laws are so archaic that they hinder progress and they foster persecution of people.
Understood. Do stay tuned. You're watching 21 Questions. I'm speaking to Bennet Charles, the Communications Advocacy Officer for United and Strong. We'll be right back.
Hypertension is a deadly disease that is common in Saint Lucia. We depend on blood pressure monitors to determine if our blood pressure is too high or too low. Should a reading on these measuring devices be incorrect, we are literally putting our lives at risk. Doctors, caregivers, and patients, get your blood pressure meters verified by the Saint Lucia Bureau of Standards to ensure the accuracy of measuring devices. Look for the green pass sticker on the blood pressure meter at your next visit to the doctor. The correct reading can mean the difference between life and death.
For more information, contact the Saint Lucia Bureau of Standards at 456-0546 or email slbs@candw.lc or visit the website at www.slbs.org.lc. Saint Lucia Bureau of Standards, making quality and standards our way of life.
Nestled amongst the rainforest, sitting in the cradle of our cultural heritage is the best-kept secret in Soufrière. Jardin Kako, dine in the ambience of nature surrounded by bamboo and tropical hardwoods. Jardin Kako is inspired by the lush tropical environments of fruits, vegetables, and spices from local organic farms. We pride ourselves as offering a plantation-to-plate experience of local Creole masterpieces. At Jardin Kako, our warm, friendly, and hospitable staff will be there to greet you. And the secret is with
March 9th to the 12th at the Darren Sammy Cricket Ground. Doors open to the public from March 10th at 10 a.m. Over 100 OECS exhibitors from across the Caribbean, showcasing authentic products and premium services. The best of the Caribbean, brought to you by TIPA in partnership with the OECS Commission and the Government of Saint Lucia. Title sponsor, Amerijet. Visit Specialty Caribbean Expo for more information.
Hello and welcome back to 21 Questions with me, Jessy Leonce. For those of you just joining us, I'm speaking to Mr. Bennet Charles. He is the Communications Advocacy Officer at the United and Strong organization, the human rights organization in St. Lucia. Mr. Charles, I understand that you have recently returned from an event, a regional event on human rights. Can you give us a bit information about that trip and what came out of it?
Definitely. One of the critical factors we've had in the region specifically is really and truly to sort of bring together organizations that focus on human rights issues within the region and itself, particularly the LGBT issue. If you realize that generally to move forward in a global sphere where funding is being reduced and it has become more difficult for donors to actually give funding to organizations that operate on various bases in itself, the critical thing of the meeting in Antigua, where we actually sat together for 5 days, putting together what is called ECADE. ECADE is the Eastern Caribbean Alliance for Diversity and Equality. Really and truly, it's a bringing together of LGBT organizations and human rights organizations within the Eastern Caribbean. And Caribbean, really, you can go into the island coming in itself. 17 countries form part of this Eastern Caribbean Alliance, and to more or less advocate and work together in enhancing the movement and ensuring that there's some sort of cohesion as to what we do as a region when it comes to human rights issues.
Understood. So a new board was
Yes,
selected.
definitely. There is a new board, a board of 11 directors in itself, with Barbados having the chair for this board. We do have a Saint Lucian who is on this board, Joan Didier, who is definitely a human rights activist, especially in the field of HIV. She sits on that board from Saint Lucia's perspective in itself, persons from Saint Martin, from Barbados. So really and truly, it's a representation of the entire Eastern Caribbean region in itself. And we choose to forge relationships and alliances with other organizations within the French-speaking Caribbean, the Dutch-speaking Caribbean, and even the dependent territories. So really and truly, it's solidifying how we move together as a region, because let's be realistic, CARICOM, political intergovernment structures, OECS. So we as the organization within the region, we need to come together and consolidate our resources in order if we want to really move forward as organizations. So it's really critical coming out of that is how can we advance the cause of LGBT persons within the region? What can we do to work together to solicit funding that we could actually share those funds across the region and more or less advance the cause of not just LGBT persons, but human rights holistically.
What were some of the topics discussed? What were some of the outcomes?
One of the critical things really and truly we see realizing is the ability of organizations to communicate in terms of communicate the message. But bigger than that is, which came out very often, was the relationship with the media, persons like you. And I think sometimes the media has been seen as a foe of human rights organizations. However, I think there is a lot of work to be done with the organization that seek to work with the media. We've done some LGBT sensitization training with Saint Lucia and some of the media organizations in itself. But I think it's something that every organization at that meeting in Antigua was asking, that we develop those relationships with the media, where the media is seen as an ally, where we help allow the media to shape stories that paint a better picture of the LGBT movement and human rights movement within the region in itself. So that was a critical thing. And one of the biggest issues really and truly was consolidating funding, ensuring that in a world where grants and funding become a lot more difficult to access, how can we work together to ensure that the little that we have, it's spread across the Eastern Caribbean, and at least we each get a slice of the pie.
Understood. What are some of the outstanding achievements of ECADE as well as United and Strong on the local front?
Right, on the local front, critical is that we've been able, last year, in collaboration with ECADE, we hosted the very first Caribbean Men's Conference. Too often we've heard the fact that Caribbean men have been marginalized. We see the figures, girls are performing better, boys are not, in every sphere of life. And so ECADE, in partnership with United and Strong and Dom, Charter of Dominica, decided to come together with support from various international organizations to really and truly get from Caribbean men who both belong to the LGBT community and other human rights organizations, what is it that could be done to stem the tide of HIV, the impact it had on the LGBT community, on men in the Caribbean region. That is one critical thing. The other thing really and truly is the conference for women, sexual diversity conference for women. Again, ensuring that the diversity of sexuality and bringing women from the various, how should I say, sexuality spectrum together. That was held in St. Croix last year, and truly, again, bringing women together and allowing them to as individuals, allowing them to forge relationships, those two things are very critical. I think the birth of K in the region is critical for moving forward U.S. issues in the Eastern Caribbean in itself. For United and Strong as an organization, I think being involved in terms of being able to at least foster relationships with the Ministry of Health, being able to at least advance in terms of providing more advanced services, programs for persons within Central. I think certainly ways which we have shown that we've grown throughout the 16 years. We're actually celebrating 16 years.
Wow.
This year started off in 2000. So it's really and truly, I think, it's showing that the organization has evolved and evolved in terms of for positive at the end of the day.
Expanding back to the region, the sub-region, which countries in this regional grouping are struggling? And where does Saint Lucia fall in that spectrum?
Right.
How well are we doing in terms of adhering to LGBT rights?
When we actually met together as a region, and this conversation has been happening from since 2015 or thereabout, United and Strong is seen as one of the model organizations within the Caribbean region in itself. I think because of the dedication of persons who came before me. I mean, you know about Kenita
Yes.
Placid, who's done a lot of work for the organization in itself. And I think the fact is that United and Strong, really and truly, we have a board, we have a staff, we have management in itself. We have a safe space, we have membership, and we have persons who are willing to work with us. In the other Caribbean islands, when you look at situations in Grenada, when you look at situations in Dominica, and itself in St. Vincent, where they're struggling to actually become established organizations, even the issues of registering the organization, I mean, some of them are having certain problems with that in itself. And when you look at persons who have assisted the organization in growing, you look at persons like Veronica Snack, who's been a legal mind behind the organization assisting. So I think we've been able to pool resources and work collaboratively with other persons in itself. So United and Strong is really seen as a model organization within the Eastern Caribbean. And I think this was the driving force to really shaping how the Eastern Caribbean Alliance for Diversity and Equality sort of took its footing from in itself. And hopefully United and Strong will continue to be a model organization, not just for NGOs, but for the government, and understand how governance structures work and how you become inclusive of people, no matter the political affiliation, no matter the sexual orientation, but we are an organization that has become inclusive, and we work with persons no matter whether they're an LGBT member or whether they're an ally.
Understood. In St. Lucia, what does the work of United and Strong entail from a day-to-day, month-to-month basis?
Definitely. For us, on a day-to-day basis and a month-to-day basis, we actually have a 3-year strategic plan in place. So we have a communications plan and a strategic plan in place. Critical for us, one of the things we do on a daily basis, really and truly, is to ensure that we reach out to members of the community, persons who've had any negative experiences within their daily lives. We provide on a daily basis counseling services. We provide a safe space where LGBT members can actually come in here and sit down and have a conversation how the day went in itself. We provide services in terms of mentoring. We've had situations where we've attached LGBT members to other LGBT-friendly organizations in Saint Lucia in itself, so they receive training where they become a bit more employable. So on a day-to-day basis, we provide that. We do outreach to various organizations in terms of understanding LGBT issues, in terms of understanding how stigma and discrimination affect people. So we document on a daily basis the LGBT persons. We on a daily basis are executing programs. Currently, we have 2 new programs that have just been launched. One was launched yesterday, which is the Red Light Project. And the Red Light Project basically focuses on women. I think too often we've heard the case of women who've been physically abused, verbally abused, and so raped. And so what the organization did was actually to source funding where these women would be trained to, one, develop their own security plans. And it's because we heard so much about the talk, but very little action in itself. So these women will be trained in security plans, how they can develop their own security plan when they're going to work, when they're going on party, those sort of things. They will also be trained in self-defense. And itself, so they at least have some way of fighting back if they're attacked. We'll be training them also to actually be peer educators, so they can reach out to their fellow women and assist their fellow women in itself. So that, I think, is one of the biggest things we're looking forward to, and we're very happy about this particular project. So I call it my baby because when it comes to working with women, it's really my comfort zone. And itself, so I think the Red Light Project is really and truly, it's a new area for United and Strong in terms of specifically focusing on women at the end of the day. So it's really, we're looking forward to the results, and hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years it will be a bigger project where we can actually get some more funding to actually span it and target other areas within Saint Lucia.
Understood. Red Light Project, I'm definitely looking forward to the outcome of that.
Definitely.
Do stay tuned. You're watching 21 Questions. quite an engaging topics that we're talking about right now. Stay tuned for more.
Introducing Ring, the world's most advanced doorbell. The Ring Video Doorbell brings convenience, monitoring, and security to your most valuable asset, your home. Ring streams HD video and audio seamlessly over wireless internet to smartphones and tablets. The doorbell's 180-degree HD camera lets you monitor more than just your doorstep, during the day or at night. It's easy to install the Ring Video Doorbell with the included mounting hardware. With dual power options, you can power Ring with the built-in rechargeable battery, good for over 12 months of regular use. Or hardwire Ring to your existing doorbell.
Ring lets you see and speak with whoever's at your home from anywhere. And with dual power options, you can install Ring in just minutes.
With convenience, 24/7 home monitoring, and the peace of mind of added security, Ring families are always home. Order your Ring Video Doorbell today.
Island Style has so many beautiful tiles. It will knock your socks off. Visit us today or call 452-TILE in the north or 453-TILE in the south.
And call 450-TILE for our Castries location on the VG Highway.
HB Cough Syrup is an all-natural syrup that provides from coughs and colds without side effects. It's a premium herbal syrup that is fortified with tulsi and molethi and other powerful, scientifically proven herbs. It offers quick relief from severe coughs caused by bronchitis, asthma, allergies, and even serial smoking. This non-drowsy Ayurvedic formula has no alcohol and produces no side effects. HB Cough Syrup for instant natural relief from the toughest coughs. Ask for it by name at La Pharmacie de Pulpe and stores island-wide.
The Independence Planning Committee invites you, Saint Lucia, to come together as one as we celebrate our 30th Independence Anniversary. February 19th, we invite you to pray together, praise together, and worship together at the Darren Sammy Cricket Ground from 3:30 p.m. Prayer, praise, and worship Sunday, February 19th, will also feature the Fellowship Chorale, the Royal Police Band, choreography, and dance. Let us allow our love for country and patriotism to rise in us as we shout, I am Saint Lucia.
Welcome back. We are talking to Mr. Bennet Charles. For those of you just joining us, so he is the Communications Advocacy Officer at United and Strong, a human rights group here in St. Lucia. We've been talking on quite a few topics. We came down to United and Strong, the daily operations, the monthly operations, the policies, the plans, organization. You mentioned friendly agencies.
Yes.
How are we faring? How is the United and Strong faring in engaging the healthcare services sector in terms of dealing with the LGBT community, as well as education, the education sector, in terms of spreading the awareness of the LGBT community, tolerance, etc.?
Right. Definitely. One of the critical things for United and Strong is that understanding that as an organization, you can't foster change on your, by yourself. You may facilitate some aspect of it. However, we need persons, we need organizations that operate within the sphere of St. Lucia. And I think one of our closest organizations when it comes to the health sector aspect of it has been, one, the Bureau of Health Education within the Ministry of Health, and also the sexually transmitted infection clinic at the hospital itself. So these two major organizations have really assisted us in terms of reaching out to the LGBT community. We partner in terms of conducting outreach, conducting sexual health clinics with these organizations. So they've really and truly assisted us in targeting the population and ensuring that, you know, this thing works very well for us. So, you know, we're happy about that. And definitely we hope that this relationship can grow at the end of the day. When it came to, trying to reach out to other organizations, we're hoping that the relationship is going to get better. Mm-hmm. We've had some relationship with the Crisis Center, where they've actually referred persons to us, persons who've been put out of their homes by parents, LGBT persons who've been put out of their home by parents. And so the organization actually called us and tell us, well, these persons in situations. And we're to reach out to government support from the Center of aspects of healthcare kits and health packs to the members who are affected and persons who are on the streets.
Does United and Strong also operate as a safe house?
Not as yet. It is one of the factors, I think one of the biggest factors. We do hope that in the next 2 to 3 years. However, we do provide some level of housing through members within the community in itself. But definitely it's something that we really want to explore. Within the education sector, we've been doing a lot of work really and truly at the community level, really and truly reaching out to youth organizations. And we started last year with the National Youth Council in itself, and the year before also. And so we do hope that really we can sit with the Ministry of Education. The reason why we're very, I think, touchy about the Ministry of Education, I recall last year there was a statement made by the then president of the Teachers Union that the teachers would be forced to teach things they don't believe. And we took offense to that because we saw teachers as, I think, teachers help you color the world. It may not necessarily be the colors of the...
Teachers change the world.
Precisely. And so we were very saddened by the statement made by Mr. Monrose, and I took offense to it, and the organization took offense to it. So it's something that we want to really explore cautiously, in terms, because the ministry may have one policy, but also we may need to deal with the teachers union on that. But certainly being able to expand our conversation to the education sector, ensuring that we focus on sexuality, not sex, but sexuality at the end of the day, and inclusion.
And getting parents to apply, to comply and
to understand those things. So we think the start has to be at the community level, and we hope that it could grow from the community level into other sectors of society.
Okay. 16 years, United and Strong.
Yes.
And
definitely.
yet we still experience issues in the society.
I think
with compliance.
Definitely.
And tolerance.
The tolerance, the acceptance, you do have the issues in itself. But I think we've come a long way as an organization in itself. We've had situations where the office has been burglarized, the office has been burnt in itself. But I think it has fueled us internally to continue. It has fueled our allies and the members who still keep on coming to the organization and supporting the initiatives that we have. And I think these are the critical things. If your members continue to be part of the organization, feel like they belong to the organization, this is where we drive our energies from. We draw our energies from.
Now, on the individual level, can you give me some testimonials, perhaps, of some of the experiences, degrading, traumatic experiences that some of your members might have experienced living in Saint Lucia?
Definitely. Coming into this organization, my focus predominantly was working more in the capacity of counselor in itself, where really and truly I was providing a level of support to persons who were troubled at the end of the day. And when you've had situations where persons have gone to interviews, but the interviewer was not pleased with the way they were dressed, and they were asked to return the next day dressed more feminine in itself. And you wonder, when a young person is bullied at a secondary school because of their sexual orientation, when you have persons who are bullied via, the internet on a daily basis at the end of the day because they walk differently, because they speak differently in itself. We've had situations, a situation where a young man was put out of his home because his mother's boyfriend did not agree with his lifestyle, approve of his lifestyle in itself. And he basically was living on the streets at the end of the day. And so we had to really and truly try to provide some level of support for that young man. Both psychological support, financial support at the end of the day. And it was traumatic for him to try to go home when the stepfather wasn't there.
Wow.
Or meet his mother somewhere in town. Or when you're forcing a young lady to walk through the streets of Castries to go to an interview, but she has to wear heels because she's asked to come looking more feminine and walking through and the name calling from the men, and it makes feel like, really this is not the person, not who she is. And the psychological impact on that is certainly one that I don't want to experience, and I think anybody should be exposed to.
And of course, the LGBT community must be very grateful to United and Strong. What has the response been from your members, from persons who are not members, but they ascribe to the LGBT community?
Right.
How have they been responding to the organization?
I mean, we've had some mixed, like anything, that we've had some mixed emotions and mixed comments. You have persons who truly understood what the organization has been doing, and we have grown from strength to strength throughout the 16 years in itself. You do have persons who don't want to be associated with the organization, so they may not necessarily come to an event. Again, I think because of the way society views
the stigma,
right, those things, so they would not necessarily come to the event because they don't want to be seen associated with the LGBT movement in itself. But definitely you have persons who may not come to the event, but if you call for support, be it financial support, be it technical support, especially members of the LGBT, but they're allies, they have provided a lot of support in itself. And I think this is what keeps the organization going. The fact is that we have more persons who are in support of what we're doing than the detractors at the end of the day. And sometimes in any movement, I think you would have persons who are very comfortably where they are in their sexual orientation. They don't want any, big hoo-ha, they don't want any noise being made about it. They're
discreet.
They're living comfortably, and that's okay because that's who you are. But there are persons at the end of the day who want more, who feel that they've been treated by society, who feel that they've been discriminated, they experience it on a daily basis. And it's our right as an organization to represent them.
How does the local general public, by and large, continue to perceive and deal with members of the LGBT community based on your observations? You have the nature of which keeps on raging on. Many think that we are all born as tabula rasas, and we're born with a blank slate, and we're taught habits.
Right.
Therefore, we can't unlearn it. And so, how has that? What was that perception?
I mean, the debate I don't think this debate will ever end. But I always tell persons when they speak about the nurture versus nature thing, I'm like, how can you tell a young man walking down the street that he sees a young woman and there's an automatic connection, and he loves the way she her eyes, the way she walks, everything else?
It won't be every woman.
No,
but that
and that is
particular
the
woman.
thing. Yeah, and no one has said you need to be attracted to a woman. No one has said that. But there's that innate, automatic, that something about this specific woman. So if it can happen for quote unquote a heterosexual person, because again you don't know people's sexual orientation, why can't it happen for someone on a different end of the sexual spectrum, that a man sees a man walking down the street and there's some connection that says this is who I'm attracted to, spiritually, physically, sexually, emotionally, at the end of the day. People have a hard time believing that very thing because when they hear about LGBT issues, they think about sex. This is the key thing. I think the population has changed in terms of support, and it's, I mean, in the past you would hear a lot of the name calling. And we've had the stories of persons who've been beaten in public and itself, and still it happens. On Friday evening in the town of Grizzly, you had 2 young ladies, who were harassed by some men in the community, and speaking the slow remarks, about all they need is a man, those sort of things.
Also, the role of the church.
And the thing is that I say that people are dumb. It's the person you need to reach out to. You find that when you speak to people collectively, they all follow the same pattern of thought. If you pull them out one at a time and you have an individual conversation with them, you might find a different spin on that. And I think sometimes we need to maybe educate people one at a time and understand the difference and how they see things. And I think this is one of the critical things we need to start exploring, that people sometimes want to be different, but they fear being out of that, that circle in itself. So they stick to what everybody else is saying. The church says, this is wrong, this is sinful, so I want to be part of this, so I will say the same thing. But when you meet them on a one-on-one basis, the conversations are different.
It's different.
Persons have stopped me in some conversations, pastors, and said that we believe we have a right on, and the cause for the right is for the community.
Wow.
Something like, but it's human rights, it's one thing, right? And there are persons who stop me. Persons say, you're very brave. I've had situations where persons have called on radio stations threatening to shoot me in the head, on buses, decapitate me, cut my throat. But, I keep moving on. The organization keeps moving on and keep doing what we have to do.
Interesting. I mentioned the role of the church a while ago. Have you had any experiences or have had to counsel any young person who found themselves perhaps, you mentioned to me earlier, conversion therapy?
Yes.
That's what it's called?
Yes.
Can you expand on that?
One of the saddest things we experienced, I think, during the last election campaign was that one thing which is good was that there's some politicians who preached a platform of Christianity, and you would go to those meetings and you would hear the Christian music playing. And you had persons who came on those platforms and said that LGBT persons were demonic possession. It was demonic to be part of, to be an LGBT person in itself. And so we've had situations where persons have said that, the pastor said them that they need to pray to get the demon out because it's a demon they've been possessed. And conversion therapy is really trying to say that to change somebody's natural inclination to be who they are. And it said it's done usually, it can be done through electroshock therapy, talk therapy, exorcisms in itself, really and truly trying to say that you're not LGBT, there's a demon in you, or you're mentally ill, so they will use electroshock therapy, talk therapy, all sorts of therapies to convert you to where you're supposed to be in the mind of that person, which is you're supposed to be heterosexual male or heterosexual female. Anything apart from that is either you're demonically possessed or you have a mental illness.
Interesting.
And those are the sad things, and persons here are experiencing, especially the issue of being cleansed of our LGBT demon. And it's because, if you're cleansed of this demon, then you would go back to being a normal person.
Wow. Quite an interesting discussion we're having at the time running out. When we come back, our final segment.
Life as we know it would be impossible without numbers. How would you know your birthday on a calendar with no dates? Imagine a bank account without an account number, or who you call on a phone without numbers. It is practically impossible to live without numbers. It is also impossible for the NIC to process your claims if your employer does not put your NIC number on the C3 forms when they are submitted. Everyone 16 years and over should have an NIC number. Know your social security number and ensure your employer knows it as well.
NIC for the benefit of us all.
Well, gentlemen, the good news is that you've been chosen to take part in the Reggae and Soca Festival in New York City.
Thank you. We are very excited.
You will love our music and our vibe.
That's great. Congratulations and keep in touch.
Once you believe and you perceive, say anything you want in life you can achieve.
I told you you were going to make it.
I have a plan right here in my land. Then I celebrate it with a pizza in my hand. Let's make it happen. Pizza Bear, let's make it happen. Enjoy pizza responsibly.
Looking for a professional building maintenance services company? Call Lewis Industries Limited.
We are the experts on flooring solutions, restoring all types of natural stone floors, including stripping, sealing, buffing, scrubbing, and polishing of all types of resilient floors. We also clean and shampoo all types of carpets and rugs and offer non-skidding products for your slippery tiles. With over 26 years experience, Lewis Industries is the industry leader. We offer washroom supplies and environmentally friendly cleaning and restoration for residential, commercial, and industrial properties. We also distribute a wide range of janitorial equipment and washroom accessories. Ask about our specialty services, including pressure washing, mold and mildew cleaning, and more. Professional, reliable, affordable. Lewis Industries Limited, the name you can trust.
Welcome back. We are talking human rights issues on 21 Questions, this episode of 21 Questions. More specifically, LGBT rights. I'm speaking to Bennet Charles. He is the Communications Advocacy Officer at United Nations Human Rights Association. It is a real situation in Saint Lucia. But for the LGBT community, even more so, because they face discrimination, even at the point of being interviewed.
Yes, definitely. One of the things the last statistics on unemployment in St. Lucia, I think, was 25%. I may be, open to correction on that. However, even within that population in itself, one of the critical things has been the ability of LGBT members to seek employment. Like I said earlier on, we've had situations where persons have gone to interviews, and they've been the fact that you're not dressed for what we see your gender is. So you're too masculinely dressed, or you're just too feminine in itself. And so it's difficult for a young person to operate within this sort of environment in itself, where you can't go to work feeling comfortable. We understand the policies of the private sector, we understand the policies of the public sector, but it should not infringe on the right of a person to gain employment. I've had situations where I've reached out to organizations to assist in terms of getting employment for LGBT members, and they were very honest and open and said that we would not advise you to send this person because they look too masculine for a woman. They dress too masculine, and the person in that particular establishment may honestly not hire them simply because of the way they look, simply because of the way they're dressed in itself. And that is a critical factor in itself. I know the Labor Code speaks to some issue of discrimination in itself, but we hope that we can actually revisit the Labor Code and look at some of the issues. Because it's not about being LGBT only. There are too many other factors affecting people that hinders themselves being unemployed. Even in some cases, just being female, it's difficult to get a job. What you do, you bring some. So how the hospital sector is really, I think, open to working with LGBT population in itself, because I think persons always say that persons from the community are a lot more receiving of persons. They're much more friendly. They do a lot. They work a lot harder to keep their job in itself. They're a lot more pleasant in itself, especially within the hotel and tourism sector. You do have quite a large percentage of LGBT persons working within that population. This year, one of our calendar events would be to meet with HR managers of various private sector companies and really and truly do some LGBT sensitization for them, and really and truly to set up an internship and mentoring program where we can get some of our young persons in those programs to just get a level of training and mentorship so they become more employable. We think two factors are affecting St. Lucian young people. One, being underemployed, being unemployed, and sadly, third one, being unemployable. There are persons who may have the degree, but honestly, the work ethics, those sort of things. Yes. So we do hope that when we're able to meet with those HR managers in itself, we can actually set aside some sort of relationship where they will be open to at least providing some level of assistance to very hardworking young people in this country and at least make a dent in the unemployment percentage.
Okay, I want to make a switch now.
Sure.
As early as last month, we saw a homosexual coming out on social media to give an account of how he was being taunted by a fellow Saint Lucian about his sexual orientation.
Yes.
We have not in Saint Lucia quite seen this response before coming from someone from the LGBT community, responding with such confidence and such resolve publicly. Would you say it was a healthy ventilation on his part for someone who had found themselves being the subject of scrutiny for their sexual orientation many times, or would you say he went overboard by fighting fire with fire, essentially, digging up dirt on the individual as well?
Right.
What's your position?
I think one of the critical things, and we did make a statement on that, and I mean, I think this thing got like 30,000 views and likes and whatever. I mean, Donovan Moneville has always been very confident as an individual. I don't know if he has always been that confident, but when I came into contact with him through United and Strong and through Panel Queen pageant, with him, very, very strong and confident young man. He's quick with the tongue. And maybe some people don't like that approach, but I think it has been his safeguard, and I think it's what something different that you can speak to me how you want. Donovan is the tip of the iceberg as what so many young people who are not necessarily members of the LGBT community face on a daily basis in this country. Young people who are just different, maybe their socioeconomic background is different, and itself. So maybe some person may have found that the way he did it was not the way they would have approached it. But I think it worked for him in the sense that it showed the other person that, do you know what it feels like to be bullied?
Yourself.
Right. And then when he turned the tables on her, I think you got a different approach. And people like, so this is what it felt like. And sometimes you have to put the bully in the shoes of the person who's been bullied for them to understand that. And I think it worked for him. And I wish that a lot more young persons who are not necessarily LGBT people could stand marginalized persons can stand up against the persons who are to the bullies in the schools, in the communities, our young women in the workplaces who are bullied based on for several reasons. I think he's the poster child of how to deal with bullies in itself, and at the end of the day, I think he's comfortable with who he is as a person, and that is the important thing.
How concerned is the organization of the United States administration halting Planned Parenthood assistance in other less developed countries? Also, if you can give us, I would imagine you would have some idea of the extent of the impact that this halt on Planned Parenthood assistance has had on these countries.
Right. One of the things where I was very surprised is that I was currently listening to the Prime Minister, I think just after the issue came about in terms of President Trump's view on immigration, and the Prime Minister said that he was very surprised about the stance, the Trump stance on immigration, and I was very surprised. The Prime Minister was surprised. I mean, first of all, the only thing I think which was very accepting a foreign by Trump was his wife, because his wife is obviously a foreigner. And the critical thing is that the entire platform of the President of the United States now was anti-LGBT. Everything seemed to be having very conservative in itself. The president, the vice president, is very anti-LGBT. And in terms of is really and truly, there has been a call by the president to ensure that LGBT funding be reduced and cease in a lot of areas in itself. What does that mean? That means that a lot of places where we could apply for grant funding to continue the work, from donor agencies to intergovernmental agencies within the United States, really and truly is a no-no now.
Wow.
It's on a halt. We don't know how it's going to go. And it really and truly affects the programming of the organization at the end of the day. And I don't think people truly have taken some time to sit down as a government and process those things. When you put a halt on immigration, on certain issues in itself, and the whole issue of LGBT, and I think the atmosphere that's in the US right now, our young people who are migrating to the United States, the persons who believe that because of them, this twice. You see that in Miami, you know, we had Caribbean people who were affected in this. A lot of our young people are seeking refugee status in Canada and moving to the US. When the environment that you're hoping to get protection from is changing against you, you now figure out, okay, what could be done at home to make me want to stay at home? And that is where we hope to engage with the government to make this environment a lot more conducive.
Okay, we're running out of time, but I must ask, you have been very vocal on the matter of the 18-year-old who was accused of attempting to blackmail the finance minister.
Yes.
Can you reinforce your position for this show, as well as tell us whether this issue came up in discussion while you were at the regional conference? Have other countries, other people, other advocates been talking about this situation?
Definitely. One of the things which, again, United and Strong, first of all, our conversation has never been on the line of morality. We believe whatever is done in a man or woman's bedroom, whether you be bisexual, transsexual, what's done in the privacy of your bedroom as consenting adults, this is your business.
According to the law.
According to the law. But not if you're LGBT, it's not.
Well, that too.
Right. We're all sexual beings. We have fetishes. And we must learn to accept responsibility if those fetishes make their way into the public's domain. And our issue with, one, the Prime Minister, is that he said that he's waiting on a legal sort of a legal
outcome
of this before they could cabinet makes a morality decision. I mean, like, see, when is cabinet the moral compass of this country? So cabinet now makes a decision based on morality. So we had a problem with that. We had a problem with Sarah Flood Bobred, Honorable Minister, who has called her cabinet colleagues in the past murderers, who stood up and spoke against the amendments to the abortion bill in itself, but remained very tight-lipped until recently, but still very little. And her other colleagues who have been very quiet. United and Strong wants the Honorable Prime Minister to make a definitive statement on the issue instead of dodging, and that the Honorable Eubalus Raymond accept his responsibility in the matter. And this is what we're not getting from him. Accepting responsibility as a grown, whether he be heterosexual, whatever his orientation is. This is your fetish, this is what makes you who you are, accept it.
And the consequences which follow based on the impression you've given?
Right, at the end of the day.
Final question from me. The government of the day is proposing that the age of consent be extended to 18 from 16. What say you to that? Also, the Prime Minister, Alan Shastney, also stated that he feels parents should be held responsible for the indiscretions of minors. What do you hold to these 2 points?
Very simple. While the move to change the age of consent to 18 sounds very good on paper, you have a policy. Practically and realistically, all the young persons who are getting pregnant at 16, how are we dealing with the situation? Sorry, underage, 15, 14, 11. How are we dealing with that? Do we have the proper structures and policies and facilities in place to assist them? What about the young men who are impregnating those young ladies? Or older men who are impregnating those because that's what the masses want to hear. But how do you put it into practice? Because if you can't deal with it when young girls are getting pregnant at 15, I don't know if they're pregnant at 17, unlikely. Again, we have Bodley who is overcrowded. We have limited social resources, but we want to hold parents responsible. But in what way? Do we take them to jail? Do we charge them? Do we charge the fathers also, when most of our households are single mothers?
Or the parents of the male minors.
The parents, precisely. So again, we say things sometimes, and I think that sometimes the Prime Minister is suffering from what I call a dismal sense of perspicacity. He seems to be not really thinking properly. I believe he needs to make use of his communications team, his senior communications person, and sometimes sit back and understand the issues before speaking out on the issues. United and Strong will always remain vocal. We shall not tire. As is always saying, we shall not go quietly into the night, for sure. We will continue to be the voice, not just of the LGBT population, but every Saint Lucian citizen who believes that their rights have been exploited, be they male, female, or trans at the end of the day. We shall remain here, and we shall not ever go quiet to the voice of people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles. Your resolve is inspiring. Of course, I know Mr. Charles from the time I've been in my youth parliament days.
Yes, definitely.
You've always been inspiring. Thank you so much. Bennet Charles, the Communications Advocacy Officer of United and Strong. I'm Jessy Leonce, signing out for 21 Questions. Stay tuned for more TV programming.
Your prime time